All right, well, welcome everybody to Solar Noon Tuesday. I'm Jay Warmke to Solar Noon Tuesday. I'm Jay Warmke with solarpvtraining.com. And if you're not familiar with this format, what we do is we'll report, or I try and report or recap the latest news from the solar industry in the first 10 or 15 minutes of this. Then we highlight whatever upcoming webinars, and then we'll go into a deep dive topic for half hour or so. Today we're going to talk about, in that deep dive, we're going to talk about Open Solar, which is an online platform that you can use in designing solar PV systems, oftentimes geared towards professionals, but individuals could use it as well. I get asked quite a lot in classes and when I'm speaking about solar, what kind of tools are out there. This is a nice one. It's representative of many that are out there, but this one happens to be free. So let's go ahead and jump into the news from the solar industry for the week of February 23rd, which is Sunday this week. So battery analytics software producer TWAICE recently published results from an industry survey on battery energy storage system professionals, or BESS professionals, that revealed serious concerns about system reliability. And this is happening just as battery systems are becoming more and more critical in our energy system. And it's expected that that's going to be more so, more the case as we move forward. Nearly half of all the storage respondents said they were experiencing frequent technical issues that prevented these systems from functioning at their best. 46% of those surveyed said that there were technical issues serious enough happening once a month. The figure rose to 53% when you looked at the managers of these battery systems, and 73% when you asked the technicians who actually worked on these systems, that they were having problems at least once a month. Now, the performance discrepancy reported from the various roles suggests that there's a communication or a disconnect issue between those people who are involved in the day-to-day operations of battery systems and the people in the rest of the organization. But it also pointed out that there are serious reliability issues when it comes to the storage industry that are going to have to be ironed out. The world where electric vehicles can serve as battery backup to your home or to your community or even to the grid itself just got a step closer. This week, NEMA, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, announced the publication of its electric vehicle supply equipment power export permitting standard, which defines the technical parameters that allow electric vehicle owners to use their vehicles as mobile energy storage systems, essentially allowing them to be bidirectional, to not only charge from the grid, but also to sell back to the grid. The standard outlines the various characteristics that the equipment needs to have in order to enable this two-way charging and discharging, as opposed to the traditional, where essentially the vehicle receives power from the grid, but then is not allowed to export power back to the grid. The standard defines characteristics such as the electrical parameters it has to operate under, the communication systems that they're going to be utilizing, as well as cybersecurity that'll permit the export of power between the EV and the grid. And this will be regardless of who the EV manufacturer is. So it's a cross-platform industry standard. According to NEMA, this new standard will provide guidance to automobile manufacturers that will increase the safety amongst these installations that allow both the import and the export of power from EVs. And new data from solarpanelrecycling.com shows that the average age of panels entering recycling facilities nationwide is just under 11 years old. That's far below the 25 to 30 year lifespan that was expected before these panels were going to be coming into these recycling centers. This accelerated retirement of panels is driven by a number of factors, includes damage during shipping and installation, and I've seen that personally at some of these utility scale systems, as well as weather-related events such as hailstorms, regular operation and maintenance activities that find that they have damaged panels that have to be replaced, and site repowering where they're replacing smaller wattage panels with larger watt panels during routine maintenance. One of the most significant challenges the U.S. faces when it comes to solar recycling is a lack of awareness that there are recycling options even available and what the standards of recycling should be. Many stakeholders, including project developers, system owners, and policymakers, are often not aware that recycling is even a viable option. Even when they recognize that recycling is feasible, they may find that a lot of these facilities only process or recycle a small portion of the panel. In fact, some recyclers only recover the aluminum frame of a solar panel, and that only makes up about 20% of the mass of that panel. The remainder is often shredded and just put into landfills. Other recyclers use a process similar, or a process that separates the glass from the silicon and from other metals, allows them to recycle up to about 95% of the panel. Currently, Washington State is the only state in the US that requires solar panel manufacturers to offer recycling of panels at no cost to consumers. Other states that have laws related to solar panel recycling are California and Hawaii that treat damaged solar panels as toxic materials, or hazardous waste, I should say, and New Jersey, where developers are required to reuse these panels, damaged panels, on low-income projects when they're not damaged too badly, or establish a recycling program. And North Carolina, where solar panel projects larger than 2 megawatts have to have a decommissioning plan in place. In most states, damaged solar panels are just treated as construction waste, and for the most part, they simply end up in landfills. Instant Permitting Act. Well, let's see. This is the Residential Automated Solar Permitting Act, was recently proposed in Illinois. This will require local governments to adopt instant solar permitting for residential solar and battery installation. Permitting of solar systems can often be a bureaucratic, time-consuming, and expensive process that can present significant obstacles to families hoping to put solar on their roofs. Even for very simple projects, the solar permitting process can add days, weeks, even months to the installation process. And they found that in Illinois, the typical permitting adds in soft costs between $4,100 and $4,800 to the average solar system in that state. Now, instant permitting platforms, and these are like Solar App Plus that are out there, can cut down on delay times by performing hundreds of code compliance checks and flagging errors real time when these things are submitted online. For a typical installation, it can be completed. If it meets all of the requirements and there are no errors, you can receive the approval, the permit instantaneously online. Now, the impacts of implementing such a system statewide can be significant. A report by Brown Climate Solution Labs found that implementing instant permitting in jurisdictions across Illinois could spur the additional 300,000 home installations by 2040. Now, similar instant permitting legislation has already passed in California in 2022 and in Maryland in 2024. And interestingly, and a new analysis shows that a clear majority of people submitting comments on a planned Central Ohio solar farm actually support the project, a stark contrast to how opponents have portrayed public sentiment against the project. Recently, a review of more than 2,500 comments submitted regarding this project there in Central Ohio found a bit of ballot box stuffing going on. Originally, the Ohio Power Siting Board had recommended that the permit application be denied, noting that 73.4% of all of the comments they had received were in opposition to this project. But after accounting for repeat commenters who submitted multiple times, the study found 80% of the commenters were actually in favor of the project. The review found that more than 600 repeat comments had been submitted that should not have been considered in attempts to qualify whether there was support or opposition of the project. And they found that 16 individuals had actually collectively submitted more than 140 comments, mostly in opposition of the project. Now, solar opponents, some with ties to fossil fuel groups, have used town halls and other forums to portray that there is widespread opposition to these utility scale projects in rural Ohio and across America. Sustained opposition has led developers to drop plans for at least 4 large solar developments in Ohio within the past 15 months. Nationally, research released last June by Columbia University's Sabin Center for Climate Change Law documented hundreds of renewable energy projects facing significant opposition across 47 states. Now, reporting from NPR found that much of this opposition was coming from a group called Citizens for Responsible Solar, which is a Virginia-based organization that's largely funded by the oil and gas industry. And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that or any comments? Yeah, Peter, you've got a comment?
Yes, I have 2 comments. If you flash back to that picture of the large battery bank with numerous cells in parallel, that's a good picture to be titled, "Don't Let This Happen to You," unless perhaps they have thought ahead and put Belleville or conical springs under the screw heads on there, because those battery cells move around and change shape as they age. And if those bolts are torqued down tight, they're going to tear loose from the cells on the end as that stack changes shape and size. So having conical springs allows them to move somewhat, or they would be better off with U or Z-shaped bus bars so that there can be some accommodation of that change in shape of the cells. The other one's real brief, and that is, so a lot of panels do get replaced with higher output panels. And the motivation, I would suspect, in the US for recycling panels, as opposed to selling them into a secondary market, is they're not worth a lot on the secondary market. They're worth something. But a lot of things that don't have a lot of value do have negative value if someone says, oh, that fire on my roof started from the solar panels that were once on top of your Walmart store or whatever. So
Right.
there's kind of an economic sense, benefit to just shredding them. And then there's no negative asset value going down the road. So
Mhm.
that's what I want to say.
Yeah, and you raise a good point because there's also very little study that's out there on just how useful the life is for these panels that are lightly damaged. You know, if you talk to the manufacturers of the solar panels, they're going to say, "Okay, it's just not worth the risk. You should use new ones." Well, of course, they're in the business of selling new panels. In fact, I'm working with a group and we're hoping that the funding will be in place, working with Ohio University in Athens, as well as another nonprofit, to take some of these damaged panels that are coming from these utility scale systems and actually test them over time. Because that's the thing, we can test them immediately and say, okay, they're generating 95%, 98% of what's expected. But is that going to be the case over time? Are they going to significantly degrade, rapidly because of this damage? Are there coatings that can be put on these things that prevent any of it from happening? Just what constitutes too much damage? And then looking at things and saying, are there other uses for these panels, for the severely damaged panels, other than generating electricity, because these things are big sheets of aluminum, and the idea of throwing them in a landfill, if you've ever gone out and bought a sheet of aluminum, it's pretty expensive. So, could these things be used for fencing, for chicken coops, who knows what? But not even thinking about them in terms of panels, but there other uses that can be adapted for these panels rather than just throwing them into the landfill or recycling them. We ran into the situation with the utility scale up there in Columbus where they wanted, when you take them to a recycling center, they want $14 a panel to recycle them. So it's not like I'm just giving them to you. First off, you got to ship them to North Carolina. You got to pay them $14 a panel. It was going to be tens of thousands of dollars to get rid of all of these panels. And of course, the developer goes, you know what, throw them in a truck and take them to the landfill because it's just not worth. I can do that for $500 or I can spend 10,000 and ship them to North Carolina. And you know what they're going to choose. So we need,
Sure.
this is a problem. It's got to be fixed.
Yeah. These panels that are no longer active, they could be scraped clean and used as greenhouse glazing. The
Could
glass is
be.
good, the frame is good.
Yeah. Yeah, and even if they're just structural, we were talking about, can you take them and face the solar panel towards itself and simply have the white part showing and make some sort of attractive fencing. Where it's just panels going up against boards, who knows? It might work. I mean, the idea of just the back of a panel doesn't sound appealing, but there is a way, I'm sure, that these things could be played around with a little bit and make them look good, and that's something that should be researched. Somebody should be looking at this stuff saying, hey, there's an aftermarket goal here, and we can create that, whether it's making electricity or using them to make something else, who knows?
Jay, Devananya, I mentioned that your permitting costs across like what, 4, 5 thousand US. Um, I mean, in Trinidad, we roughly pay about 5 or 600 US if I were to put an equivalent US figure to get our permits and license. How are the costs that high come to that figure?
Okay, I'm not quite sure what you asked.
You hear me better?
Yeah, I can hear you, but what are you asking? What's the cost of?
Yeah, why is your cost of permitting solar in USA so high
Yeah,
compared to Trinidad? It's roughly about 5 or 600 US dollars to do
yeah.
something in Trinidad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because our governmental process of permitting is annoying. It's it can be absolutely maddening, even for very small systems, and it's all locally controlled. So in some locations, it's inexpensive and easy. In other locations, it's absolutely absurd. To give you an example, I ran into a situation with a very small installation. It was only 6 panels on a pole, and because it was located at a commercial location, the state was requiring we get a structural permit signed by a professional engineer in Ohio because we couldn't use one from California, which we already had. We also had to have an electrical permit signed by a professional engineer in the state of Ohio for a 6 panel solar on a pole thing that was going to be used as a classroom demonstration. And the permitting process was going to cost us about $7,000 for a $10,000 installation. Absolutely absurd. So there's oftentimes no logic to it. Well, there's logic to it, but the logic can take you to a point of absurdity, where, their argument would say, well, we need a professional engineer because that ensures safe, compliant, and well designed, and blah, 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 blah. And you go, okay, well, your goal is then safe design, safe installation. Are there other ways we can achieve that goal other than the one you came up with that you want to apply to everything? So it really is. I mean, it's in the case of this one, they wanted $7,000. If I installed it in the county adjacent to them, they have no permit. So there is such an inconsistency. So in one county it would be free, in the other county it's 7,000, and both counties will insist that's the only way you can do it. So that's it's frustrating. So Doug, you had a comment?
Just a question on the recycling,
Uh-huh.
uh, because that was focused mainly on silicon panels. What about like the First Solar CadTel? How much of their stuff is being recycled? I mean, they have a recycling. Do they? How much of the materials are they actually recycling?
Yeah,
In
I know
recycling?
that with First Solar, they have a guarantee when you buy it that they will recycle that panel. So my assumption is 100% of those are being recycled. I guess your question is, how complete is that recycling
Hey, Jay, I
process?
think you're muted.
No, I'm good.
No,
I think
I can
Doug,
hear you.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I don't know how efficient, because with First Solar, of course, they're cadmium telluride thin film.
Right.
And so I would wonder, are they able to actually recapture that cadmium? Are
Yeah,
they
that's
able
why
to
they recycle.
recapture?
I think that's part of it too, because
Could be.
cadmium or not the cadmium, the tellurium is rather pricey.
Yeah, and you would imagine that they can do it, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
You they who knows? Even if you ask them, I still will be unsure, because I'm getting so jaundiced with everybody telling you it's all rainbows and unicorns, and when you dig down, it's not. It's something less than that. So
Yeah.
I'm often accused of being a cheerleader for the solar industry and anti-fossil fuel, and the reality is every industry has its problems, and we just have to
Absolutely.
accept that. We try and be better. I think ours is better than what's come before, and hopefully what comes later will be better than what we're offering. So, anything when you reach a certain scale is going to cause problems. And
Right.
solar is no different.
Right. And a comment, because I've been concerned about the recycling. No, very little, if anything, in the recycling business is really 100%. Just chemistry, material science doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But can you be well, can you do a good job, uh, relatively speaking? A comment on like reusing the panels, like especially the silicon uh, panels, etc. These other options are nice, but the problem really is this is such a huge scale. We need, there are only so many solar fences you can build, and
Yeah.
it's going to be saturated with the amount of material coming through. Uh, what I would throw out there, just for people to chew on, is the idea of a prize. If there were a way to get some funding, maybe a GoFundMe type thing, and put a well-positioned prize saying, if you can address recycling of these products, you win the prize, and maybe make it staged and have an independent panel, an independent board that gets paid $1 a year to oversee it.
Mhm.
So they have to receive some salary usually, but $1, so it's not, and it's all transparent. That might be an interesting approach to it. So just a thought,
Yep.
a hope.
Yeah, and of course, this is not a problem that's unique to the solar industry. I think we're more receptive to the idea of saying this is supposed to be solution to a bigger problem. Let's try and avoid causing this additional problem, because the recycling is definitely an issue. In our world, Blue Rock Station and the like, where we do demonstration of sustainability, reuse is always a better option before you get to recycle. Recycle is sort of the last step. It's better than just throwing it away, but it's not an end all solution. So we'll take baby steps, try and be better, but there's certainly, when compared to the problem of electronics, compared to the problem of other coal ash, things like that, the recycling of solar panels, relatively small problem, but still a problem nonetheless. And what we're seeing from this reporting is it's a problem that's coming at us quicker than people might have imagined. So it's good we're aware of it. Let's try and be better, be best, right? That sounds like a catchy slogan, right? All right. Anybody else have any comments before we jump into the webinars for the week? Let me go ahead and jump in here. So the announcements for the week here is Actually, today at 2 p.m., solar tax credits made easy. This is a guide to the domestic content compliance that's part of the IRA. We'll see if that holds up, if that, stands the test of history. But at the moment, they're trying to define what qualifies for domestic content. Then the 25th through the 27th, Intersolar out in San Diego. Is a conference coming up, face-to-face conference. 26th tomorrow is your system ready for hail, basically. That's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern time. All of these numbers are Eastern time, and you can find these webinars. I'm just trying to make you aware they exist. This one here is about utility scale design of your systems. This one's on March 4th. Solar layouts done right. March 6th, actually, I signed up for this one. I wanted to see. I've ranted and railed against nuclear. I'll be interesting to see what the nuclear guys have to say. But this is all about data centers, nuclear, and artificial intelligence. They're going to make the case, I suspect, that small nuclear is an option. If you want to go back a couple of weeks, we did a program here saying, in my opinion, it is not. And I'll stick with that opinion. And anyone who disagrees with me, I'll meet you in 10 years and we'll see who's right, So that's one's an easy one as far as I'm concerned when the world of projections. I could make my case right on this one thing, right? In order to get the permitting, it takes about 5 years. How many of these things are already underway for permitting? 0? Okay. If it's a solution, it's at least 5 years in the future.
And don't forget the fuel. Where are you going to get the fuel?
Yeah, where are you getting the fuel? Oh, yeah. Well, we won't relitigate that. We already won. We already won that battle. They're on their way to jail. All right, on March 6th, 2 p.m., CPS, the 250 kilowatt inverter. I suspect that's a product thing, but if you're interested in a large inverter like that, it might be a good one. March 16th through the 19th, Solar Plus Wind Finance in Phoenix, Arizona. That's a conference. Battery Innovations on March 20th at 2 p.m. Then we've got Distributech in Dallas. That's going to be March 24th through the 27th. The NABCEP conference, that's same week. This one's going to be out in Reno, Nevada. That one typically sells out, so go ahead and sign up if you're so inclined. May 19th through the 22nd, so we're getting a little bit of lead time here. Clean Power is going to be out there in Phoenix, Arizona. And then our shameless plug for our courses and online and in person is at solarpvtraining.com. And we also have the 9th edition of the textbook, Understanding Photovoltaics, that's out. So just plugging those. Okay, so that's the news. I'll invite the folks who are online at the moment. Anybody have any comments before we jump into all about open solar? Give you just a shout. This is good. We're having good interaction here today. I was chastising the folks online before we got started that everybody's quiet during these sessions. So it's good to have
Jay,
the...
David, just a request. Next week, when you come for the following session, I don't know if you could do a dive into me on what you have across in terms of the floating solar industry.
Okay, you want me to profile photovoltaics, floating solar?
Yeah, we have something happening in the Caribbean with that. I just want to hear what you all guys are doing across the regarding that industry. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I also ran into, that's great. And I'm sure that could take up a whole session. There was another one I was thinking about. We mentioned solar walls, not just using the panels as walls, but there is a movement towards solar, vertical solar, basically. And I just saw Apple installed a huge solar skylight in one of their facilities. So I don't know if that's enough to move a whole program on, but those are just newer into innovative. But photovoltaics presents a whole range of issues. So okay, that's good. Thanks, Devin.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
It's Dennis.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey, I got to ask one question. Am I the only one out here working today?
That's right. Everybody else is sitting in their nice heated offices. So All right. Okay. Is
No,
that
I
your
was just going to
comment?
say I'm doing a house right now that has a floating array on it. I'm actually on the site.
Are you putting it on a pond or where is it floating?
Well, no, what I call a floating roof array
Oh,
on a
okay.
rubber roof
Yeah.
with the cradles.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Yeah. So a ballasted type system.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think Devanand is talking more about photovoltaics, which is basically putting it on water.
Oh,
There is a movement towards having solar arrays installed on ponds, on reservoirs, over canals.
hmm.
It's a whole industry where they're looking at that. And of course, when it first crossed my awareness, my first thought was, oh, good, mixing electricity with water is always a good
Yeah,
idea, you
yeah,
know.
that's
But
right.
there are certain locations where it really makes good sense. Um,
Sure.
so so it's a thing. It's an industry. So yeah, it's good. Good suggestion. We'll dive into it. So
Jay,
yes.
this is Lilibet in Savannah, Georgia, a recent transplant from the Northeast.
Uh-huh.
And I'm very interested in the industrial hemp. Have you run across or know any solar panels being constructed with industrial hemp, and also solar panels when it comes to hurricanes, especially, down here in Georgia area?
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can look into that, but I've never heard of any. I've never heard of hemp. Hemp to me is more of a cloth kind of thing, but that doesn't mean anything. The fact that I've never heard of it. Um, I don't know. And hurricanes are problematic, obviously. I suspect most damage with hurricanes, my understanding is it's more the flooding that causes a lot of damage. So if they're high enough, may not be an issue, but high winds. I know, Siggy, do you have any comment on the hurricane thing? Because I know you do installs down there in Tampa. Is there any issue there with your local zoning that deals with hurricane issues?
Not necessarily with the zoning. What I noticed is that these installers here in Florida, they love to go bigger and bigger and larger on these solar panels. So I have a couple of jobs now where we have 640-watt solar panels and they are 30 square foot. So these are little sails. And the larger these panels get, the more, of course, point loads you have on the feed. And some of these panels don't have the pressure ratings that will pass 150-mile-an-hour wind zone. So we have to be a little careful about what solar panel you specify for what location. And one mistake that is done very, very often in these hurricane zones, and they all do this over and over and over, and I kind of like give up the fight. But these installers or these salespeople like to put these solar panels in landscape orientation. I shouldn't call it landscape orientation, but they like to place them on the roof in a way where they mount them on the short edge of the module. And if you read the installation manuals of these manufacturers, they either have no rating at all in that kind of constellation or a very diminished pressure rating. Yeah. So these are my 5 cents or 2 cents.
I think too, you mentioned a while back about the way that they're clipped onto the rails can vary and can be significant.
Yeah. You usually, one rule, my advice is a clamp on the long edge of the module, read the installation manual, and stay within the manufacturer prescribed clamping range, which is typically plus minus 2 or 3 inches where the bottom mounting slot is. So if you put your finger under the module and you find the bottom mounting slot, the slot where you mount the module, if you were mounting it from the bottom, usually plus minus 3 inches. That's your mounting range. But read the manual. And if you go outside of that range, the difference can be significant. It may be passing or not passing those wind calculations.
Yep. And then, of course, the zones on roofs can be significant as well when you talk about wind catching. And so I know when you're using one of the like Iron Ridge design tool, it will ask you your zip code and it'll factor in your wind load and things of
Yeah.
that nature. So it should be engineered to meet. But if you get hit by a hurricane, chances are, you know, your house is going to be gone. You know,
Yeah.
whether your panels aren't going to survive if your roof is ripped off, you know?
Yeah.
Golden rule is stay away from the corners. I
Yeah.
mean, don't put your panels into the corners, and then stay at least 2 times the height of the module above the roof surface away from the edge. So, which is usually about 10 inches to a foot of the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pressure zone 2 is a perimeter of the roof, which is in Florida is treated as a 4-foot wide zone.
Yeah.
If you can avoid that, but it doesn't in many residential projects, it doesn't leave you with much real estate on the roof. So
Right. Well, the fire code will require 3 feet.
yeah, it's in Florida is a little bit more complex. It depends on how much of the actual building footprint you cover. If it's
Yeah.
more than 33%, it's 3 foot, and if it's less than 33%, it's 18 inches on each side of the ridge.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
But not every fire department sees it that way. So
Yeah. Well, you see that violated a lot because it's the International Fire Code, not the National Electrical Code. And the inspector may know the NEC, but they show up and they don't know anything about the fire code. So people get away with a lot. So
Jay,
yeah,
may I ask another question?
Sure,
In
go ahead.
here, having just moved here, I have a few neighbors who have just had solar installed on their homes. Now, I talked to some other neighbors because I was interested. And is there a reliable source to go to for your area to see which companies are better than others and what they, stand behind? Because there have been so many different pricing, and when it comes to the taxes and to the ownership, so there's a lot of us here in Savannah area are very confused on what exactly, who we can rely on, who we can trust.
Yeah. Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't know of any standard, clearinghouse. And what you're raising is a big issue within the solar industry. It's within many industries, but we're still kind of in the wild, wild west. And there are a lot of bad players out there. Apparently, Dennis is the only one out working. So, Dennis, you can drive down to Savannah, and but
Actually,
typically,
I had planned on moving to Bybee this year, but yeah, I would have been there to help her out.
uh-huh. Well, normally what I recommend is, and I think the first rule of solar and really almost anything is do not be sold a solar system. You should go out and buy it. So you want to research and find it and purchase it. You don't want someone knocking on your door selling you a solar system. So I would say if somebody comes knocking on your door, I would almost 99 times out of 100, it's bad. It's bad news. So go out and find your guys.
Yeah, if they have to knock on your door, they're not doing a good enough job because they're looking for work.
Well, at Earth Day last year that I attended here in Savannah, they must have had 3 different companies there represented trying to sell the solar panels. And then one was in touch with me and they said that Georgia has a special arrangement, the state of Georgia. And, they were giving me all this. And then between the government benefits and the tax benefits and ownership, it was very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lilibet,
Yeah.
this is Dennis Gard. I'm also in Savannah. I've gone through this in other locations. I've done PV design and looking at a selection of contractors in the Savannah area right now. So why don't we talk offline?
Yeah, I love your contact information. How do we do?
Yeah, Jay, how do we exchange contact information?
Well, why don't you
platform?
just type it into the chat while we're here, and she can get it that way.
Lilibeth, I'll send you an email address. How about that?
Okay, and I'm sending you right now my contact info in the chat. Okay.
All right.
And some of what I typically will recommend, because what you're asking about Savannah, is true almost anywhere in the country. I First step would be to find somebody who's already had the solar installed and ask them what their experience is. And
Yeah.
if you can find somebody who's got solar and they had a good experience, that's a good first recommendation.
It's just early here, Jay, believe it or not, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing, in many, many of the red states. So much of the world of solar was focused on California and then Colorado and Arizona and Nevada, and then you get into Texas. So some of us who are late to the dance, like I'm in Ohio, there's obviously South Carolina. I just heard even states like Alabama, Mississippi are catching up a lot. Florida, of course, one of the big, they were late to the dance as well. It was always funny. We used to joke that the Sunshine State doesn't like solar, well, they've kind of embraced it and are moving forward. But I would say there's still going to be folks around you that have solar, and you can just ask them, just knock on the door and say, hey, who'd you get it from? Were you satisfied? One of the issues that we run into in the solar industry is that some of the door knockers are not actually going to be the installers. They're out bird dogging jobs. And then they're going to turn around and sell that contact to somebody else and take a commission. Some of them are more interested in selling you the financing than they are interested in putting solar on your roof. So, and of course, if you get these leasing situations, that can often be a super nightmare because they'll sell you a lease, and then there have been many, many instances where that lease the install was never completed. It never worked, but now your payments are coming on top of the fact that you're still having to buy electricity from the grid. And many people are basically finding themselves encumbered with debt for a system that doesn't work because yeah, go ahead.
And the leasing people roll over the like bundling like they do with the mortgages.
Yeah, and also I thought you meant by rolling over. They'll as soon as they make as soon as they made a bundle, they declare bankruptcy and they run away, and you still have this debt. So, so it really is. Yeah, we're seeing from Catherine. She's saying just avoid leases at all cost. If you can't afford the solar, if you can't get a loan for the solar, well then obviously do without. It's like renting to own a television or something. You pay $30 a month for $100 television set. You pay it over 8 years. I mean, that's the kind of thing people get into. So, yeah, I don't have a good substitute for just talking to people, getting referrals. Does anybody else have a suggestion on that? Because this is a big issue out there. As
I can just tell you my experience I had just lately. About 2 years ago, I had an 11 kilowatt system from GAF installed on my roof, and it worked as expected the last 2 years. But about once in a while, GAF sent out an infrared drone pilot and checking my roof. And sometimes I joined and I saw a few heat spots on those cells. And but everything functioned fine. And about last month, I got a call from GAF and they said, we have a warranty recall and we would like to replace your entire solar system. So 2 weeks ago, they came out and replaced the entire 11 kilowatt solar system and put a new one on there. So I didn't object. I thought that was nice. Yeah. So when I initially purchased that system, one of my thoughts were
Sorry.
that's a big company, the GF company, so they probably have to stand behind their product. The product was relatively new. It's the Timberline Solar nailable shingle, solar shingle. So much for that.
Yeah, so you're dealing directly with the manufacturer on that, not the installer?
I was actively looking for a certified roofer who was certified to put this on the roof because it comes along with a regular shingle. And so I had the contract with the roofer, but the electricity and the shingles were provided by GAF. In the end, GAF contacted me to replace everything. So they hired another roofer to put everything back on 2 years later. So after 2 years, I basically have a brand new system on the roof again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but I actively was actually looking for a certified roofer by GAF. There were only 2 in the region, so it wasn't much to choose from, and the price difference was significant, like $20,000 difference in between those 2 companies.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think with most solar materials, there are no good. They're not that closely aligned, I should say. Although it occurs to me as you're saying this, and maybe this will help you a little bit. If you decide, and most consumers aren't going to be ready to say what kind of system I want, but let's say you decide you want to have an Enphase system installed. Enphase has a list of certified, trained installers who have gone through their training available through their website because Enphase and SolarEdge and some of these other companies have decided they only want to deal with the installers. They don't really want to deal with end user customer types, and so they require certification from these installers. So that might be a place to start. You know, if you decide I'm going to put in an Enphase system, maybe get with Enphase and find out who in your region has gone through their training.
Is that ENPHASE, Jay?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
they're the microinverter folks. Then of course there's ETA and NABCEP as far as certified installers. Those are the 2 certifications that are more generic in nature. The problem there is, again, sometimes companies will have one installer who's certified, you know, and good luck getting that person to do your actual installation. So I would hesitate to say that's going to be a guarantee of quality installation if you just look up on those databases. But again, it's better than nothing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And
If I can just interject here a second, the thing is, well, Jay, I've installed systems for over 10 years now, and I finally put my system in this last year, and I went with a string inverter. I got away from it. I replaced too many SolarEdge inverters and too many Fronius, and and Enphase, I don't even like them to begin with, but because they're just too hard to install. But I went with a ground stand with a grow watt inverter, and I'm really, really happy. 11.4 inverter yesterday generated 65 kilowatts. So, I mean, it depends on your area and your roof space and whatever, but you have to look at different options, when you're looking at your solar.
well, let's put it the other way around because Dennis, you're an installer. You're over on the border between Indiana and Illinois. Is that right, or Ohio and Indiana?
Yeah, I'm right down in the foot of toes. I'm in Evansville, right on the river.
Okay. So where do you guys get your customers? How do they find you, or how do you find them?
Mostly because, well, there's not very many installers, so let's just put that out there to start with, but most of our customers, 70% is word of mouth, just from the systems we've installed and the people that tell other people. The house I'm working on now is we'd installed a system for her sister. So yeah, we're doing, I mean, a lot of it comes from word of mouth. I mean, we do have, salespeople, and we just do, Facebook, some other advertising, but basically it's because the people have been happy with our service. We offer them different options, and because we install all systems, depends on what they want. We do batteries and that kind of thing, but it's but about 70% is word of mouth.
Okay. So you're
Um,
reinforcing what I'm saying is basically find somebody with a system and ask them if they're happy. And if
Sure.
they are, hire that person because I think that's you're not going to go wrong that way.
I may have a suggestion, Jay.
Sure.
Happened to me before, but you could look on NAPSAP for PV system, professional PV system designer, and have them evaluate your property and have a system designed to what the designer thinks best for your situation. So you're basically paying a fee or an engineering design fee to that person, and then you this designer can give that out to companies to bid on. So I've done that for a customer before. Only happened once, but the customer had exactly the same concern. He said I had like 3, 4, 5 companies come by, and they all seem to be like snake oil salespeople. And so he contacted me, and I designed what I thought was best for his condition, and then I got him some prices, like 2 or 3 prices on that, from companies that I work with that I think are reputable. So
Yeah, that's a good approach. So you're basically hiring a professional to then do the selection process.
kind of like
for
your
you.
lawyer, except for it's your PV designer. And
Yeah.
there are a couple of them listed in every state, maybe a handful of them or so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it may even work even if they're not within your state because they may have good contacts with national firms. There aren't very many national installers of systems, so it really comes down to local knowledge, I guess. So I'm talking myself out of getting somebody from out of state. So, but yeah, and this is good. This is good conversation. I want to continue it for a couple more minutes, but I'm going to say, I think we've used up our time for open solar. So I think what we'll do is push that to next week, and because I don't want to give it short shrift, it's going to take the full half hour. But anybody else have any other questions? Because this is to my knowledge to my sense very fruitful to see what's on your mind.
All right.
I think
I
I have
will say this one thing.
Yeah.
If somebody tries to evaluate your house and they don't come out there and look at your house, then they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten some outside evaluations, and I go there, and the house is totally good. There's roof vents, there's skylight, there's the angle is stupid. I mean, whoever gives you a quote, they have to look at your house or
Yeah.
your plot. See where the trees are, see where to make sure that they understand the site. You can't take a Google map and evaluate a house.
Yeah, that's sort of getting into also what open solar. Open solar is a remote site assessment tool, and as you're saying there, Dennis, it relies on Google Earth or Bing Earth, whichever one you decide. And sometimes you'll find that information is significantly out of date. I do a lot of these for commercial properties. And when I come back from having done the site assessment, I look on Google Earth and it's just an empty field because the house or the building is 3 years old and it doesn't show up on Google Earth. So or it looks like a construction site, or trees that were there are no longer there, or trees that weren't there are now there. And so, but it's a good first step. It's a good initial thing to sort of get a vague idea. It's also good for solar designers to sort of, there's a lot of time wasters out there who are just going to, I just wanted you to come out and do an assessment. No, I'm not going to do it. So maybe you can do that without incurring the cost of 3 or 4 hours driving out to the site. But if they're serious, you got to go there eventually. You got to be there on site eventually.
Sure.
But it's a good tool in your tool belt, but it's not the only one.
Well, it's the problem I'm running into today is that um, uh, didn't know they had vaulted ceilings, so I can't run the wires through the attic.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna. Ralph's laughing. He's like, yeah, uh, So now I'm having to try and reroute, the wires around to the inverter, to get them off the roof.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it's but you can't. I didn't see that. Nobody saw it until. And it's just one little spot. It's
Yeah.
just one little spot.
Yep.
So
Jay,
it's
can I ask something else? Because I came late to the dance here today.
Uh-huh.
You had mentioned a battery innovation in March.
Okay.
When
Um,
is that through you? Is that
a battery innovation. I'm trying to get on the
the
same page.
seminar.
seminar maybe?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. No, that's not through me. No, it's one of the webinars that's coming up. And I'm not quite sure which one it was. It was
March 20th.
And how does one connect and listen to what they're going to discuss?
yeah, this one's going to be through Solar Power World. If you just do a Google search, Solar Power World, it's the webinar. It's going to be at 2 p.m. on Eastern time. It's just called The Next Frontier of CCI Energy Storage, the latest innovations in the 2025 market. So I would just do a Google search or go into Solar Power World. That's a magazine, and they're the ones sponsoring it. It'll be a free webinar.
Okay. I don't know if you have heard or know of these company. I think it's in the southern part of Texas. This woman is researching on batteries made with sea salt. That's
Oh,
come.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's a company called Aquion or Aqueous that's out of Pittsburgh, Case Western University. They've had this available for a while. It's a good technology. It has a lot of advantages. Has won a lot of green awards. Problem, of course, with that particular technology is at the moment the price. Also, it's heavy. But battery technology. I always like to tell people we're in the floppy disk age of solar, but in the world of batteries, we're in the punch card world of batteries. I mean, the innovation is just getting started, and lithium ion. I think everybody acknowledges that's going to be a bridge technology. How long that bridge is going to last is anybody's guess. I'm afraid it's probably going to last longer because the prices are coming down and there's a lot new discoveries of lithium, but eventually it'll be surpassed by something.
I
And
think that the seawater, I mean the sea salt coming from, if extracted from, of course, the oceans, but from the process of desalinizing the ocean waters for our needs in various locations for water would be of great importance for everybody.
Yep. And it's definitely a technology that's there. Question is, can it be done at a competitive price? And that's what all of these technologies typically come down to is at what stage does it become competitive with the alternative? And so I think eventually it will. When that's going to be, who knows? All right. Well, I'm going to call this meeting to a close
Jay?
here. I appreciate everybody's attention. Yeah, somebody had one last comment.
Yes, one last comment. Craig Munson here.
Uh-huh.
It was regarding the in-phase system. You in the certification for a DIYer, would that require that sort of certification before purchase or commissioning just to
Yes.
install that particular system?
Yes, before commissioning, it depends. It depends because if you're going to be installing a battery or a switch, then definitely. I ran into that personally where
Right.
I went to install my system and then they're saying, oh, you've got to go through this training course before we're going to allow you to commission it. And I was saying, when did this happen? This is like my fifth install. What are you talking about? And the guy was, it's a good training. It's good training, and it's well worth you going through. And it's no cost, but you got to jump through some hoops before they'll even allow you to take it, because
Right.
they don't want to deal with home, do-it-yourselfers.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing. All right. Well, let's call this to a close, and thanks everybody. And I appreciate all of your time and attention, and we'll see you next week. And I promise next week we're going to talk about open solar. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.